bienvenue à la séance d'aujourd'hui qui s'intitule « Qu'est-ce que ça signifie d'être un fonctionnaire féru de technologie ?» Welcome to today's segment on what does it mean to be a tech-savvy public servant. My name is Audriane Racine. I'm an HR advisor at Employment and Social Development Canada and one of the co-chairs for GC Student, the network for students under the Federal Youth Network. Je m'appelle Audriane Racine, mes pronoms sont elle, she, eux. Je suis conseillère en ressources humaines à Emploi et Développement social Canada et l'une des coprésidentes pour étudiants GC, un réseau pour les étudiants sous le réseau des jeunes fonctionnaires fédéraux. I would like to begin by acknowledging that I am on the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. The Algonquin peoples have lived on this land since time immemorial, and I encourage all of you to acknowledge the land you are on as well. Au fur et à mesure qu'on va progresser dans la session d'aujourd'hui, veuillez partager vos questions en utilisant le bouton de questions et réponses Q&A dans la langue de votre choix. Vous pouvez voter pour les questions que vous voulez poser en appuyant sur le bouton du petit pouce en l'air. Today, we have three panelists joining us. I would like to welcome Roy Nader, Meg Beretta, and Jeff Altram. Before we start the question period, please share with us a bit of your career journey and how you came to be part of the public service. We will start off with Meg, après Roy, and then Jeff.
Thank you so much, Adrienne, and nice to be here today. I am calling in actually from Halifax, and for my third week on the job with the Nova Scotia Digital Service here, working for the province of Nova Scotia. But most recently, I was serving as a Chief of Staff at Service Canada, and prior to that, had a hand in helping start the Canadian Digital Service. Before that, I actually was a student in the government. So for the folks on the call here who are on that pathway from transitioning from a co-op student or an FSWEP student into a more full-time career in the public service. That's something that brought me here today, as well as getting on the path of digital government in that route today that I will chat about a bit more. So happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Hey, Meg, I'm going to take it to the other side of Canada, which I'm actually in British Columbia in Burnaby right now. And my journey with the government started back in 2005, but some of you may know me from the group that I started about clicks and tips. With that group, the reason why I started is that I was passionate about finding a better way as government employees to work together to leverage the technology, but mostly to make the technology work for us as people and be able to better serve Canadians. Lo and behold, 1 out of 20 government employees joined this movement. Somewhere in around 2016, we were over 13,600. It was a word of mouth. And we were able to have webinars back in 2015 with over 1,000 people. And what that demonstrated to me is a passion that exists in the government employees that we want to do better. We want to do things in a different way. We want to leverage technology. But at the end of the day, it wasn't just about technology. It's about how we come together to achieve what was one thought the impossible. Now let's talk about that a little bit more, and I'm going to pass it to Jeff right now.
Bonjour tout le monde. I'm thrilled to be here and recognizing the land we live on. My career has meandered for the better part of 2 decades now throughout both municipal, provincial, and now federal government. When I joined the government, I'll skip forward, and it ended up me being at the Canada School of Public Service for over a decade and trying to show initiative. I was teaching courses on social media and the GC tools, while leading programs for university relations. So when the pilot project of GC Collab came up, I was tapped to lead that. That really pushed my career into understanding what it meant to be a digital public servant and the culture that comes with it and the openness. Leading that platform changed my mindset, gave me a great understanding of what users are up to across the government, what they kind of are really hoping to have to do their jobs, and some of the frustrations come with that. Since then, I've become a free agent, where I went on to lead the M365 community of practice from SSC, Shared Services, as well as the enterprise training strategy for M365 and working with the Canada School to deploy that. But thank you very much for the opportunity to come and listen to us talk about ourselves a little bit. And I look forward to the discussion.
Merci beaucoup, Meg, Roy et Jeff. On va tout de suite plonger dans la période des questions. The first question that we have is for Meg. So I will ask the question in French and then I will go to the English. So, qu'est-ce que ça signifie d'être un fonctionnaire féru de technologie de nos jours? So, what does it mean to be a tech-savvy public servant these days?
Yeah, so for me, it's not necessarily about tech savviness. Actually, 10 years ago, I would never have described myself as tech savvy. And I kind of fell down a hole into realizing that digital government was our future and that working in new ways was going to be the future of the public service. And that's when I kind of started to learn a lot more about technology and the ways of working that has gotten me to where I am today, and arguably, a leader in this field. And again, I always actually talk to people about not being that tech savvy that long ago. But what I did do was learn about the new ways of working. And that's what I really think it's all about. And these not just digitalization of previous government services, but actually just service transformation and digital transformation of the public service, which has way less to do with technology and a lot more to do with culture, organizational design, removing hierarchy, and working in the open. And these are the things that I'm really passionate about. And people are usually surprised that they don't involve that much technology. We use technologies where they make more sense, where we can optimize the way we work, where we can do things that were not done before. But so many times we actually find it's all about humans and creating a user-centered way of working, whether it's as public servants or when we're serving the public. And that's really what makes a huge impact for that. So I think when you look around this community of leaders in the government who are really these digital government leaders, they're all talking about different policy and different ways of working over the technology and leading from that first. And then, right fitting the technology to help you do that type of transformation.
Merci, Meg. J'ai vraiment aimé que tu parles c'est vraiment d'apprendre des nouvelles façons de travailler, c'est d'optimiser la façon de travailler. C'est toute une question de culture, c'est si bien dit. Jeff, Roy, do you have something to add on this point?
De mon côté, je dirais. Go ahead, Jeff.
No, I was just saying I had nothing to add.
Super. Then we will move to the second question. The question
if I can add just one thing, Audrey-Anne, it's being a tech savvy in the government is like having a superpower. Et c'est important de savoir que ce pouvoir qu'on a peut aider ou peut contre-aider. So it can help you or it can actually be damaging. And I explained a bit more. There's a say that says, you have to think about alone I can go faster, together we can go further. So if you've got a lot of superpower, you can actually automate everything. You find yourself going very fast. But if you're not bringing people with you in the journey, that could hinder you. And when we say bringing people in the journey, like Max said, this is not just about me, it's about collaboration, it's about bringing everybody together, new ways of working. But we're all busy. So we have to take the moment and explain and be the champion to read all the policies about bilingualism, accessibility, and all the other important aspects when we're looking at being tech savvy in the government. It's not enough to know where the buttons is. We also have to know the effect of that button. For example, if you take Microsoft Forms, you can ask all the questions you want on it, but that's not a protected B environment. So you got to know that at the same time and figure out other ways to make it work. So it is a superpower. You got to use it wisely at the same time.
Ah, c'est bien dit. Je trouve que tu es un beau modèle pour ça, de partager tes trucs sur les médias sociaux. C'est ça, c'est comme ça qu'on s'améliore tous ensemble. So the second question is for you, Roy. Is it only for young people, the public, the tech-savvy thing? Est-ce que c'est seulement pour les jeunes d'être férus de technologie de nos jours?
Audrey-Anne, c'est l'erreur que j'ai fait quand j'ai commencé ma journée en 2010. Je croyais que vraiment c'est juste les jeunes qui sont intéressés. Ceux qui sont à l'approche à la retraite, ils sont en train de faire un cruising along. Mais une fois que j'avais plus que 13 000 personnes qui me suivaient dans Clics et Conseils ou de Follow Me in Clicks and Tips, I was surprised to get emails the first time I got the email says, well, I'm retiring next month, but I would like to remain on your newsletter because I'm learning so much. So you get one person, you say, oh, okay, that's okay. You know what, this is different. Then you start getting those on a regular basis, and you see people retiring that still want to learn. And suddenly it made sense to me that it's really about the aptitude and the willingness of the person, not about the age. We have people in their 20s that are happy where they are, and we have people in the 60s and they're close to retirement, and they're still pushing, trying to find better ways to learn. So at the end of the day, I learned that as a manager is when I'm hiring people, I'm not hiring people for, really what I'm looking for, and I give that key, is actually that desire and thirst to learn is more powerful and important right now as a competency than somebody who knows it all. Because technology is changing at a fast pace. If you're not keeping up, you might be the specialist today for that specific item, but 6 months down the road, if you're not keeping up, you're not. So you gotta have that thirst and desire to willing to learn, no matter what your age are. And my stats have proven that anybody could be that person who's tech savvy, who's willing to learn and keep it up.
Donc, en résumé, c'est vraiment le vouloir d'apprendre. C'est pas une question d'âge du tout. Là. Merci, Roy. Jeff, the next question will be for you. Comment, le cas échéant, la pandémie a-t-elle changé la façon dont nous percevons ou utilisons la technologie, le numérique dans la fonction publique? How, if at all, did the pandemic change the way we use or view technology, digital in the public service?
I think at a personal level, I think a lot of employees will recognize that it changed it dramatically. You know, all of a sudden we're at home. We know the story. We all experience that. Like, who did not experience it? Very few people that were required to go in the office or provide services in person. So that was dramatic. For me, what it was is the crisis created opportunity for digital government of moving towards digital by default. There was really not much of an option. We needed to separate the people, and the thing that brought us together was the technology. The opportunity for that crisis was a change in mindset, and I'm talking, you know, both to the folks that are here in the FYN, all the way up to our deputy ministers. They recognized what, you know, early adopters of digital government have been screaming for years: is there's a better way of doing this. The technology exists. It's us. We're the challenge. We're in the way. If we change our mindset and a different approach, we can get to actually providing better services at a more cost-effective, with a more cost-effective result. And it really is just recognizing what happened in the pandemic was you have no option, go. That's really what it was for me. I have found in my career, it's all about patience and resilience. I'm very impatient. I'm a taxpayer. I want better services. I want to pay less taxes. I get those two things. They're kind of at opposed for most people, but when you look at digital government and that mindset, you can actually have both. And I think that's what the pandemic has really kind of displayed for a lot of folks. I won't say all, because, you know, we're fighting whether or not we're going back to offices. But if we can actually recognize the crisis for what it was in government, was there is a better way to do things. We can be agile. You know, most of us here have worked for ESDC or CRA, and the response for CERB and the other programs related to the pandemic were literally within a week or two. You know, if you had asked us to do something like that 6 months beforehand, that may have taken years. And I think it's a great demonstration of, you know, why we ask the public to trust us. So this crisis, to me, it just laid it on a display right across the board.
I can jump in on that, Jeff. My experience at ESDC is I came over just a month or two after the pandemic started. And what I was so excited to see was that the ability of ESDC to deliver and CRA on some of the concepts like CERB and the other benefits there was that it changed their entire policy stance. You know, they went for it's more than just about changing the technology, but really, really important space where we realized that we could do benefits first, audit later. We could shift that. And that's been something, you know, the digital government community has been talking about for years, is we could shift from users having to apply to the government taking on the heavy work of verifying later and get people benefits faster, especially life-saving, rent-paying benefits like what those that happen in a crisis during COVID. So, you know, we saw a way there that technology actually led to a policy change that needed to happen for a long time. And I think it's opened up an entire world of how far we can jump ahead in catching up in a lot of places where we're actually behind comparable governments. So, you know, being technologically savvy or very digitally savvy in this space is understanding the abilities of auditability, for example, or traceability and trust that we can do through a software. But really, at the end of the day, it's a big policy change. So having some of that knowledge can demonstrate what can be done there. And actually, I think the whole government learned it very, very quickly.
If I can add to what Jeff and Meg said, and one of the things that are so recently that I liked a lot is that we have learned from the pandemic and we have seen how fast we can shift and we can move and think on a wide scales. But there's a new shift right now where if you're bringing new policy, they're expecting to do some study around automation. So this brings back to what Meg said. It's like, yeah, you know what, we can give the benefit now, but while people are still applying within seconds, we can automate the system to verify the benefits from different databases built well. So we're moving to a new world in the government where we're customizing and personalizing the information within a few clicks of a button and within a few seconds. So we need to start shifting the mindset of throwing hundreds of people's at the end in order to do matching or verification to in the beginning, where we can actually automate the system and make it a user-friendly, designed by users, and those are the digital standards that we're looking for. So I saw a question that came up of how can I start positioning myself to work in that digital sphere? If you haven't done so, Google right now, digital standards by TBS. Look at those 10 digital standards. Think about how you're positioning yourselves, your skill sets, in order to sell yourself in a better way to attain those. If not, look at the gaps and look how you can start filling those to get you to the next level.
And I'll add on to that as well, as we're kind of dancing around it, is I would say at the heart of that mindset change in digital government for a culture span is we're no longer talking about clients and citizens. We're talking about people. These are people's lives. These are people's health. If we can come at it from that approach, we're going to make such a stronger decision-making approach. It's going to be more humane. And I just don't see a world in where we can disagree on that. We've got to be there for Canadians. That's got to be our focus. And I think the older mentality was, don't screw up. Spend $1 to track that penny. Whereas, you know, Meg's approach, if you flip it, get the stuff out, we can still track that penny. We just didn't have to, you know, God forbid, put a single mother out on the street. And that's a real ramification. That's a consequence. And that's a human. So that to me is really important. And I love that the shift that we actually can get to that point of view.
Jeff, you touched on something important. We have to be there for Canadian, which actually answered Catherine's question in the Q&A, is how can we make things more accessible? Because being there for Canadians is not 80% of Canadians, not 90% of Canadians. It truly is 100% of Canadians. And that's where being accessible, providing service that is accessible by design from the beginning is important. So anybody who wants to be in the digital sphere, I cannot stress enough the importance of being inclusive, accessible, bilingual, and looking at privacy and security. And those are things that you need to include part of your package when you're looking at technology. It's not enough to know Excel. It's not enough to know Microsoft 365 and automation. You also have to understand the impact on other people. It's really, truly, it's not about technology. It is about people.
I think we fall for a trap in the feds. I've worked for the municipalities. I've worked for the province. You know, the municipalities literally clean the end of your driveway or take away your garbage. You know, the provinces provide you roads and healthcare and education. The Fed services are much more removed. So I think it's really easy sometimes for us to lose sight of that culturally over the longer term. And I think we're starting to have that pendulum swing back to what, again, I just argue is right, is the sense of focusing on the people, recognizing that they're humans.
Merci pour vos réponses. Ça a été un beau sujet de discussion, cette question-là. Merci beaucoup. The next question will be for Meg. For those looking to stay relevant, what should we be learning about, looking into? Donc, pour ceux qui cherchent à rester informés, que devrions-nous apprendre ou examiner là, pour rester à jour? You're on mute, Meg.
I think first thing we need to learn is when to unmute yourself.
Ça, c'est la première chose à apprendre. Alors,
Bon exemple.
Comme j'ai déjà dit, c'est plutôt le nouveau mode et façon de travail qui c'est super important, pas les technologies spécifiques. Aujourd'hui, les logiciels ils doivent d'être faciles pour les utilisateurs. Alors, pour la plupart de les personnes, il y a des habilités de base qui peuvent vous informer pour tous les logiciels que tu vas utiliser, mais c'est plus important d'apprendre les fondations des autres capacités. Alors, les capacités comme les philosophies de données, c'est pas super important que tu connais Stata ou Power BI ou MS Dynamics. C'est important que tu connais les philosophies de données, les choses à propos de le privacy? Privacy? Oui. Oui, la privacy, la protection de les données aussi. Alors, ça, c'est les choses qui sont importantes. C'est celles qui sont sous toutes les technologies, les choses qui sont importantes, comme l'accessibilité, l'inclusion, ces fondations, c'est plus important. Et puis, comme ça, tu peux utiliser les logiciels et toutes les technologies qui sont juste les utiles qu'on utilise pour livrer les choses plus importantes. Et c'est aussi, c'est pas nécessaire que tout le monde sont familiers avec tout dans ce domaine. C'est pas important que tu connais les données, l'intelligence artificielle et aussi la livraison de services pour le public. S'il y a une chose qui vous intéresse, prendre ça et avoir ton intérêt, ton domaine de connaissance avec ça. Et puis, comme une spécialiste dans un domaine, ça va vous aider beaucoup, spécialement si ce domaine vous intéresse. Ça, c'est vraiment la façon de continuer avec une carrière où tu es heureuse et utile.
Merci, Meg. Je crois que la prochaine question qui va être dirigée vers Roy, c'est vraiment dans la même lignée, en fait. Si justement on n'a pas besoin d'être expert en informatique, de savoir coder, là, de vraiment être expert dans tous les domaines, alors qu'est-ce que le fait d'être un féru en technologie démontre aux gestionnaires, organisations qui recrutent? So if we don't all need to be IT experts, know how to code and stuff like that, then what does being tech savvy demonstrate to hiring manager or organizations?
Andréane, je peux te raconter une histoire véridique qui s'est passée l'année passée. Tu te rappelles quand on a commencé dans le pandémique où on a travaillé de la maison? Une de mes employés, c'était une personne qui faisait de l'administration pour l'équipe. Donc, quand on faisait des événements qui étaient physiques ou dans les buildings, dans les immeubles, elle imprimait puis elle collait toutes les posts qu'on avait, des informations comme ça. Elle était là pour s'assurer que les gens s'en vont et s'assoient là où il fallait. Mais une fois qu'on a commencé à travailler de la maison, elle se trouvait un peu perdue parce qu'il n'y a plus d'environnement physique. Qu'est-ce qu'elle doit faire? Puis elle s'inquiétait comme quoi son poste ne sera plus disponible. Et il faut penser à ça parce qu'avec la technologie, ça change beaucoup la façon dont on fait les choses. Dans 5 ans, dans 6 ans, le poste que vous avez, ça se peut que ça n'existe plus parce que la technologie peut faire 80% du travail. Alors, il faut penser toujours à où on veut s'en aller. Puis, elle avait beaucoup d'inquiétudes. Ce que je fais avec elle, c'est je me suis assis pour lui parler. Puis on a commencé de parler au lieu de parler de la technologie, on a parlé de sa passion. C'est quoi qu'elle aime faire? C'est quoi qu'elle va faire? C'est quoi ses intérêts qui veulent dire le dimanche soir qu'elle va se réveiller et dire je veux aller au travail. I want to be at work the next day. I'm looking forward. So when you get to that point, learning is not a chore anymore. You're looking forward and you learn so much more when you're having fun. So instead of talking about here's the 10 things you need to learn on technology, we talked about her interest, and her interest was helping people, building a community, talking to other people. And what I did is I changed her title. Just by changing her title from administrative assistant to digital community builder, I could see the light in her eyes. I could see how her identity, she found the identity in how she fits in the team, and how she can contribute. And we haven't talked about technology yet. So once we started talking about she's a digital community builder, we started talking about how are you going to do this? Well, you're going to do it over social media. There's internal, there's external. You can write stories. You're going to share some best practices. And you see where I'm going with this. We didn't even talk about technology yet. Then we outlined the technology that she needs to know. She circled the ones she's very comfortable with. And we had a plan for the ones that she actually needed to learn. I was amazed by, she come in on Monday and she learned one extra item on the list. She finds it a joy. It became a passion. And you should see her growth in the 18 months we had during the pandemic. She went from being an administrative assistant to I'm actually giving her more and more priorities, and she can see her career path in the new world of where she can fit in. So when you ask me the question about, the technology and so on, it goes back to people. What is your passion? And I think Meg alluded to this. Find your passion, find where you want to go. Technology is there to serve you, to get you there. Don't try to put the cart before the horse. Learning the technology for the sake of learning it doesn't get you where you want. Figure where you need to go, how you're going to help others collaborate, and then figure the technology that will get you there.
I would also build on that and say, when you're looking at what does it show to managers to be knowledgeable about this area or to be kind of in this learning mindset, it shows that you care how all the pieces of government fit together. I actually, so maybe I'm not a great example here, but early on, before I really understood what digital meant, I was doing a lot of communications work in my career. And so I took a course called Ladies Learning Code, and it was a beginner HTML, CSS course, because I knew that I needed to talk to the developers and understand when they quoted me how long changes would take on our government website. I wanted to know if they were ripping me off or not. I was like, we're going to be contracting out. I want to know how much I should give them for this. And that was a bit of the cart before the horse. But what it did let me do is I understood a lot more about their jobs. And every time I learned about a new technology, I'm not using it in my job. I largely do strategy work. I largely do big picture thinking stuff. But it helps me whenever I meet a person. I just had an enterprise architect added to my team. And a year and a half ago, I had no idea what an enterprise architect was. But then I started working at ESTC, and now I know a lot of enterprise architects. But now, I spent the time with them. And I remember on one of my first days at ESTC, I wrote someone a message and I was like, what is enterprise architecture? Literally, it started with that. And it helped me understand actually the mindset of a bunch of people in our organization, what their job was, why we might be running up against friction when old school IT and new school IT, and these sorts of things. And so, actually, it was when I talked to employers, when I was interviewing for this job I'm in now, what I was really showing to them is I can talk to you about this. I can talk to you about this. What that means is I get the systems of government, how they fit together. And I know how to talk to my colleagues. I know how to be empathetic with them. I know how to manage multidisciplinary collaborative projects. I can talk relatively knowledgeably a little bit about everyone's work. And because of that, I can be a great team player here. So really talking about that team player, that partnership, all the things that are going to make a resilient future public servant is the things that you're demonstrating to those hiring managers.
Merci beaucoup. Jeff, do you have anything to add on this question?
Oh, heck no. I think they nailed it.
Okay. But I have a question for you.
Sure.
Comment le fait d'être féru de technologie alimente-t-il la culture qui se crée dans nos milieux de travail, dans nos espaces de travail? So how does being digital feed into the culture that is being created in our workplaces and spaces?
Both the mindset and the technology is giving more equality to employees. I'm finding that the more success we have in the GC of becoming a digital by default organization, I'm saying funny, it's almost worrisome as our senior leaders aren't keeping up to the speeds of the worker bees. And we're able to move information, we're able to find information, share it, and then it hits, perhaps the EX level. And my concern is if they don't keep up, and they keep wanting stuff in, for example, send me the attachment. No, I'm sending you a link, go to it. That mindset kind of worries me. Now I'm forgetting the question. Jeez, I was scared this was going to happen on the panel.
You want me to repeat it for you?
Please.
Okay, so how does being digital feed into the culture that is being created in the workplace?
Right. Again, you can speak from personal experience, and my mindset personally, and I've seen others adopt it with great success. Not that I was an early adopter, I kind of found it a lot like Meg said. You know, I went and taught myself how to code because I was told I couldn't use certain tools. Can't use this, can't use that, can't do this. So I was like, all right, I'll take no for an answer, but it doesn't mean I can't get to a yes. So I would lay out options to promote a program I was running in particular, and got it up and running. And all of a sudden, they could visualize it. And by them, I mean the leadership. They could see it, and you know, it was a lot easier for them to say yes because they could see there were only optical risks. There was no actual perceptual risk to it, or real authentic risk to it. And then I was getting approvals. So all of a sudden, you know, with that mindset of being open and ready to learn, being patient, it really my bumper sticker for government right now is, you know, you pay me for my patience, I'll do the work for free. Because I like the work, I like what I'm doing. You've got to be patient because there are policies that need to catch up. There is a mindset that needs to catch up. But it served me well because at the end of the day, you know, I'm walking away going, got that done and pushed forward. And I'm looking at it as a, you know, a 30+ year public servant going, what do I want to do when I'm done here? What would make me happy having walked away from a career with the public service saying I got A, B, C, and love to get D done. Be aggressive and chase that. That's what it means to me anyway.
If I can add to that, Adrienne, this is a question that I sleep on it every night because that's the workload that I'm doing right now. So my new task at ESDC is actually we're looking at the people pillar, part of the digital workplace task force. And we created a segment that is a monthly session on digital boosters. So when we're looking at digital upgrade or digital skill set and looking at the culture that we have, there is a lot of challenges that's coming with the technology right now. Part of it is technology is moving at a faster pace than anyone can adapt. With what you think about just the Microsoft 365 is all the stuff to release every month. Even myself, I can't keep up. When you think about all the other technology moving forward and making changes, the impact on information management, on accessibility, and all the other stuff is something that was going to take us time to catch up with the technology on a regular basis. So coming back to when we're doing the digital boosters, one of the things that we have found is how can we make this a win-win situation for ourselves and our partner and build a positive culture that we can collaborate? And before we even did our first session, we spent 9 weeks knocking every door we can find to talk to people and say, how can we collaborate? How can we work? This is a vision that we have. Where do you see we can add value to you before we ask them for anything? So truly, it's coming down to, it's not that people don't want to or they're resisting. Is there, maybe they require awareness, this, you know, the desire is not there. So you got to talk to the people, find ways to work with everyone else. And we have, since that we have started doing the digital booster, we've seen a tremendous growth and success. We're over 500 people per session that we're doing right now. And we're getting more and more collaboration from people in IT department, in information management, in management community and other places. So you got to think wider, think bigger. It's not just about clicking a button. Tech savvy is not knowing which button to click. It's also knowing the impact, knowing the procedures, knowing the policy, but most importantly, bringing people with you to the next level.
Merci, Meg. Meg, anything to add?
I guess my number one is in cultural impact is actually the reduction of hierarchy that can happen because of digital transformation. And so it can happen in some places, and it can make people really uncomfortable how democratic it starts being when you start using digital ways of working, when you start making things open so that you can see, even if it's just everyone's comments or everyone's input on something, when you start asking for more honest feedback and like non-judgmental feedback, what that looks like, and you create a much more democratic workspace. Workspaces are not always ready for that. And similarly, a lot of government actually then has to kind of say, okay, thank you for all your input, but actually there is hierarchy for a reason. And some of those reasons are accountability reasons and a few other things. So it's kind of a balance that I've seen play out in different ways. Sometimes it actually gets like, yeah, a little out of control. It's so flat. And you know, sometimes your leadership needs to be really aware where to bring that back up. And then there's other places where it makes it really uncomfortable. And the organization has to look at itself and say, oh, wow, we weren't really ready for that. But I think that's a good shakeup. You know, they start to realize that, you know, our staff are here. We can actually empower them to make more decisions at lower levels and really actually improve the quality of their life and the quality of their work 100%. So that's one of the things that I can't live without now in a public service workplace. And that's something that I screen going into different jobs now, is how democratic is this workplace, how empowered are each individual person, and how do they show that through their daily work.
Thank you for your answers. I see that we have a few questions in the Q&A, so I think that we will jump in the second section of this session. Donc, on va passer aux questions du public. Vous pouvez utiliser la fonction de questions et réponses, le Q&A. N'oubliez pas que vous pouvez voter pour les questions que vous aimez en utilisant le petit pouce en l'air. So if I take a look at the Q&A, the question that we have, the first one is, if my passion background is technology and helping others adapt to change and using new technology, where should I look to go work to have the best influence on future technology rolls out adoptions? So I will just take a look at the translation. So in French, si ma passion, expérience est la technologie et aider les autres à s'adapter aux changements et à utiliser de nouvelles technologies, où devrais-je travailler ou regarder à travailler pour avoir une meilleure influence sur les futurs déploiements, adoption de technologies? Anyone want to start?
Yeah, I can jump in on this. I think one of the best places to do this kind of work where you'll have influence on the kind of how it works in whole of government is to do it from the center, from Treasury Board, and that's really important because they have the Office of the Chief Information Officer. They set standards for the government, they set policies for the government, and all of those relating to technology. That doesn't mean there's not really meaningful work in the departments because, for example, I worked on how to implement the GC standards in ESDC, for example. So there's ways to carry that out at a more local level, but at the same time, if you really want to be on the top flight of those, that's a good place. If you're really looking to help people on adoption of technology, the Canada School of Public Service and the Digital Academy can be a good spot to do that. And similarly, the school at ESDC, because it has its own college, as I learned, being there. And other CIO offices, if you want to do that. Chief Digital Officers teams are great too, and those are located in almost all departments as well. So that would be my advice. Does that differ for you, Jeff or Roy?
You know what? There are so many opportunities today. 10 years ago, I had to create my own because I couldn't find anywhere. And that's one of the reasons why I created Clicks and Tips, to come together across Canada and do it. But today, when I look around, it's every person I talk to right now is almost hiring for somebody to help them with either adoption, either policy, either transformation. So what I recommend to the person is actually start looking at your story. What is it part of that digital transformation or digital upskilling you're looking for? Find your story so you can sell it better and you end up in a position that interests you. What is digital transformation for you might be somebody else, something else for somebody else. I see a lot of posts on LinkedIn. I see a lot of different places being advertised. I'm even looking for 3 people right now. I'm looking for somebody who is fully bilingual, who can do storytelling. I'm looking for somebody who's bilingual with marketing background. And I'm also looking for somebody who's a data analyst and automation at the same time. So even my entourage is other people looking. So if you're interested, send me something on LinkedIn. I'll be happy to have a discussion with you. But start by redefining your story and truly understand what impact you're trying to make to land up where you want. And this is why I hired Jeff. One of the reasons I hired Jeff is his story was clear. So I reached out to him because he's good at building community, good with technology, but mostly can speak tech and plain language at the same time, which I like to say he can speak the Greek and the geek at the same time. I'll pass it to Jeff.
Appreciate it. Perfect. And and I wasn't actually thinking of my working with you right now, right? When I say the following is, I have in the last 3 or 4 jobs, I have sought out to work for somebody in particular. You know, who is it you're working for? They have a lot of say over your career. They have a lot of say over your work-life balance. They have that control. They're going to have a lot of say over what it is, you know, what kind of influence do you have? Do they support you going to meetings on their behalf? Doing research, writing recommendations. Go and find those folks. I'm also a big fan of going to smaller departments because, you know, you're closer to the top, so you have a bigger opportunity to have more say. It's a great place to get experience, so that if you go to a larger line department, you're able to talk about the things you've done, and that buys you some credibility to buy influence in those departments as well. To Meg's point, like going to Treasury Board, that changed my understanding of how government work. And, you know, it's been a telltale sign from the GC of, you know, you should always get some experience working in the core, meaning finance, TBS, or, and I'm going to forget the other one, PCO. You know, I kind of throw the school in there as a quasi one because it has the same minister as TBS. They're closely aligned with the Office of the Chief Human Resource Officer. So that's some of my experience has been: find the person you want to work for, find what it is you want to influence, and find the person that's willing to share their influence and let you get that experience.
Merci beaucoup. Vous avez partagé tellement des belles pensées, là. Moi, ce que j'en retiens, c'est qu'il faut apprendre à se connaître. Il faut aller voir des organisations qui ont des belles valeurs puis avec lesquelles on se rapproche. Et merci beaucoup. Je vois que dans les questions-réponses, on a une autre question que j'aime beaucoup, beaucoup. What excites you when we start talking about digital? Qu'est-ce qui vous excite quand on commence à parler du numérique, là? Technologie?
Pour moi, c'est l'opportunité d'inviter les personnes d'apprendre quelque chose qui rend nerveuses. En fait, beaucoup de personnes pensent que la technologie, c'est quelque chose qui sont hors de leur domaine d'expertise, mais en fait, c'est actuellement super accessible s'ils ont le bon façon de penser et s'ils ont une désir d'apprendre. Alors, there's been many times, I think there's a lot of gatekeeping in the tech world. I think that's very intentional. A lot of people want to make you think that it's magic and that only certain people can do it and that we pay people so much money to code and these things. Coding is easy, okay? Like, you know, learning, I say that, but really it's like not that different than learning a language. If you think learning a language is like is okay, it's just that. Or if you've ever taken a logic course in university, philosophy, like Logic 101, same deal. But it's been gatekept because that benefits society, or benefits companies, and benefits a bunch of people who hold power if we say that this is too complex for people to understand. And so I think there's this really cool thing that we can actually take down the veil from people, say, you know, actually you can be a part of this. You've maybe already been a part of this in other ways that you've transformed government, you know, historically, or maybe this is actually more about policy change than it is technology. And I love making that a lot more accessible to people and instilling that confidence in them. So that's what gets me excited about it.
Andre, and I don't know where to start. There's so many possibilities, truly about the possibilities. My journey started out of frustration. And I was a team leader filling spreadsheets after spreadsheets after spreadsheets. And I looked around me, all the other team leaders were spending their breaks, and they're spending after 5 o'clock and staying behind just to fill the spreadsheets. I thought to myself, I'm a team leader, but I'm not a leader. And I wanted to transition to become a leader, because a leader spoke to their people, that empower them, but coach them. But doing spreadsheets, I'm only coaching a spreadsheet. That's not going to work. So I started going home and learning on YouTube how to do VBA in Excel. So I was able to take a task that was taking me 3 hours every single week down to 10 seconds, because I learned how to link things. It might have taken me a year, but I learned through that process to actually be more tech savvy for a purpose. And my purpose was to put people first and become a leader. So when you're looking actually at the opportunities with my team right now, I feel with the potential that we have with opening up Microsoft 365, opening up third-party apps and other stuff available, I feel we're on a Star Trek journey. Yeah, I'm going back way, but think of you being on Star Trek and you go into the unknown because we have a lot of uncharted territories, and you're going to come up as a team stronger, better by resolving challenges on the spot. So we're going to get a lot of no's, but I keep asking, so what are my solutions? When somebody tells me no, and I say, I heard what you're saying, I heard why we can't do it, now tell me how we can do it. And asking that questions changes things. So I'm not contradicting somebody, I'm just asking them to reframe how we think and helping them with the journey. And I'm excited about turning in the impossible to I am possible as a team. I'll pass it to Jeff. I'd like to know your thoughts.
I actually didn't hear the question. It was in French, and my apologies. My French is terrible.
So the question is, what excites you when we start talking about digital?
Oh, yeah. Like, okay. Now that explains Roy's excitement. Yeah, the same thing is the possibilities. That mentality of there is no no's. It's the, okay, then what is the possible? How do we get there? How do we get there together? How do we drop the politics? That working by default in the open, engaging stakeholders. We've always said, we're, public opinion research. But you go out and get a pile of opinion, you come back and do what you wanted anyway. We can't do that, and not to say everyone was doing it, but if we're working a lot more in the open, a lot more Canadians are going to see that we did something so poorly, or, you get to the end of something called Phoenix and say, why didn't it work? It's like, if you had opened it up the whole time, you would have known that this wasn't heading on the right track. It was heading right into the side of a mountain. So, what excites me, I constantly tell students I work with, just try, watch what happens. And I find a lot of them have that fear because they're at the start of their career and they want to do well and they want to make a name for themselves, and they're just trying so hard. But sometimes that trying so hard catches them up into not trying things that are maybe look, a little bit risky. And my comment, maybe I shouldn't say this today, was, the people behind Phoenix didn't get let go. So they're probably not going to let you go for trying something, to just try and do something right. It's how we're going to push forward and have a better digital government. So that's kind of what it's that mentality of let's just go, let's just try. Don't sit around and wait for perfection, because by the time you do that, perhaps the tool you're trying to use is now defunct.
Merci beaucoup. C'est tellement un investissement aussi de s'intéresser à tout ce côté-là, de rendre les choses plus simples, comme Roy le disait, d'aller chercher les connaissances pour rendre le travail plus simple. Moi, il n'y a pas si longtemps, je regardais les pages wiki du gouvernement du Canada, puis j'étais jalouse de certaines pages que je trouvais vraiment, vraiment belles. Puis là, je me suis intéressée au codage. Encore là, je ne suis vraiment pas une experte, mais je me suis intéressée, puis c'est comme ça que j'ai appris à comment gérer une page wiki, mais c'est super le fun de s'intéresser, d'aller chercher des connaissances pour avoir un meilleur produit, plus efficace puis plus attrayant. Surtout, moi, c'était surtout pour le rendre attrayant, là, en fait. Merci beaucoup pour vos réponses. The next question that we have is from Catherine. I don't know, Roy, if you completely answered the question at the beginning of the segment, but I will ask the question again. So how do we include accessibility from the design stage in new technological changes, and how do we incorporate it in existing day-to-day practices based in technology in the public service? So just in French, comment intégrer l'accessibilité dès la conception des nouvelles évolutions technologiques et comment l'intégrer dans les pratiques quotidiennes existantes?
I love this question, if you don't mind me kicking off, right? Because this is one of the ones where I actually would like everyone to learn a little bit about this. So accessibility needs to be everyone's responsibility in the public service. One of the faults in the way that we're designing technology right now in the government is that it often goes to accessibility at the end stage of the project, which is too late to start and design from an accessible position. So what I would actually challenge all of you to do is do a little bit of homework on accessibility. You know, as public servants, we already believe, I think, you know, in having a really accessible and inclusive public service. So there's some really easy things that you can just start with a base knowledge of to help bring you up to speed. Things like contrast colors to help people who are colorblind and seeing things, not using PDFs for anything that goes out to the public because PDFs are not readable by screen readers. You know, things like underlining links as well as linking them in blue, again, because of color contrast and for screen readers. And so if you can learn some of these basic principles, and those three things are like three things I learned off Twitter, okay, like digital government Twitter. Like they're not super hard to learn, but they make a world of difference if everyone can be a little bit more involved in catching those mistakes that really impair some of that disability. Some of the accommodations we do for disability, but the other really important thing to do, especially let's say if you're getting pushback against this concept, is that we are all one moment away in our lives from becoming disabled, for needing accessibility in our lives. And it's not all about permanent disabilities. You know, something that people can do with one hand helps someone who only has one hand. It also helps someone who's holding a baby in the arm. It helps someone who's broken their arm temporarily. So you have to think of it that it's not just about certain technologies people use like screen readers. It's actually a much bigger realm of accessibility, and it will help every single person access it, not just a particular group. So starting from that framework, starting with some of these basic principles that are very easy to work with in the open source community. There's so many people so passionate about accessibility work. This is one of the easiest things to educate yourself on, and you can start from that early phase with accessibility in mind.
Those are great points, Meg, and I agree with you. It's learning about accessibility doesn't just help in including everybody, but it helps you into your day-to-day life. Like I was helping somebody who was visually impaired on my team, and I realized how much the new monitor that was set at 95% brightness was affecting my headache at the end of the day, and I learned to reduce it. But how do you make sure that it's included is not only knowing what needs to be done is important, but also looking at Bill C-81, looking at the department priorities. So when you're speaking to managers or executives and you want to invest more time for accessibility, you want to draw into those priorities at department priorities and talk about how we as unit are going to meet those priorities while we're delivering on our service. Yes, it's going to take more time. Yes, it requires more resources. But if you look at the priorities and you look at Bill C-81, this is not an option anymore. It's part of the work. It's part of the job that we have to do. And by arming yourself with those priorities from the department, you're helping your boss, your director or executive, meeting their priorities at the same time. So if you look at it that you have to push accessibility, you're coming at it from the wrong angle. What you're doing is you're helping your executives meet their priorities, which is the department executives. So arm yourself with the knowledge and arm yourself with the policy and priorities in your department, and that's how you'll be able to support, and I repeat the word, support your team to meet the accessibility.
And TBS is going to be coming out with policies soon enough that we're actually going to have to abide by in response to that bill. There's some more your knowledge. You know, that's kind of the policy level, and then down to the individual level, get to know, and not to push Microsoft's products, but we've bought into them. We're now a Microsoft government for the next 5 years. Go into PowerPoint, go into Word and Excel, and you'll actually see, like a spell checker, there's an accessibility checker. It's not rocket science. They have made it very easy for us to use. I think we're all going to be told to learn how to use it soon. Be on the front lines, have that digital mentality, go and learn it before everybody requires it, and you'll look like a hero. But it's also, again, just the right thing to do, because at the other end, there are people.
C'est tellement important tout ce qui est la question d'accessibilité. Puis j'ai bien aimé, Meg, ce que tu as dit par rapport au fait que, sans le vouloir, on est tous proches d'être en situation où on a besoin d'accommodation autant qu'on a le bras cassé, qu'on ne peut pas faire le travail comme avant. C'est une priorité pour les gens qui sont en situation de handicap, les gens qui ont besoin d'accommodation, mais tôt ou tard, on pourrait en avoir de besoin. Puis C'est comme une norme de société que c'est important d'avoir du matériel qui est accessible pour tout le monde, que tout le monde peut bien l'utiliser. Puis moi, je rentre ça aussi dans le côté excitant de savoir comment bien donner des documents accessibles, de faire des courriels accessibles. Je suis fière quand je donne un produit que je sais qui est accessible puis qui peut aider d'autres personnes à bien faire leur travail ou à bien lire le contenu partagé. Merci beaucoup pour vos réponses. The next question in the chat. It used to take years for digital technologies implementation project to be completed within the government, but I see the delivery have been really quick during the pandemic. How do you achieve this fast? Donc, je vais le lire en français. Il fallait des années avant pour que les projets de mise en œuvre de technologies numériques soient achevés au sein du gouvernement, mais je vois que la livraison a été très rapide pendant la pandémie. Comment avez-vous réussi cet exploit?
I'll let someone else start, but I have some firsthand experience with this at ESDC.
Well, si on regarde qu'est-ce qui s'est passé, if you look at what happened, it's not the technology that changed first. It truly is a mindset that changed, that pushed the tools that we needed to do our work, that allows us to be more efficient and effective. So the question comes back to looking at what just happened, realize the key success was that mind change. And how can we actually capitalize and keep that going is using those success stories, and those goes a long way. So arm yourself by asking other people, when you see a success happen, ask them to see what the success was and turn it into a story that helps other people relate to it, that they can do the same and aspire to. At the same time, you know what, some department already started that journey and realized it. And this is where ESDC, because of the pandemic, started a digital workplace task force to be able to capitalize on that energy that happened at ESDC that pushed us forward to keep going with those quick wins and find ways that we can push forward. So for those who are looking to work in that environment, look at departments that are pushing in it and find how you can fit in those positions, call them. But those who want to continue those environment, it's not about the technology, it's about that mindset and helping people. What I believe the best thing I can do with digital boosters is really help executive lower the perception of the risk with the technology so they can start looking at it, evaluate it, and use it. And then we can start using the technology. But I pass it to Meg. I mean, there's so many different ways you can slice and dice this. It's really, we can spend the whole day talking about it.
I mean, I have two aggressive reasons why. Policy exceptions for bad policy. So at ESDC, the reason that they were able to launch CERB so fast was they did not go through the regular security policy. And I know this for a fact because then just this July, that happened in whatever, May or June of 2020. In July of 2021, my team had to launch a very small product of a 4-page web page. And there was 82 steps to get through the security policy process at ESDC. The final written documents ended up being more words than The Great Gatsby. So we have a broken security. There was a broken security practice at ESDC. It continues. I no longer work there. But the security practice was actually in my opinion, does not make the service more secure. It was a lot of security paperwork without a lot of security application, like what we call penetration testing or black hatting it. So which is where you go in and you actually try to break the system. You try to act like a hacker. You try to penetrate all of the security systems around it. Because as many of you know, writing a 10,000 word document does not actually make something safer, right? The actual, putting really top line security features in, developing it really well, working closely with your accessibility and security colleagues, those things make it secure. So that's a huge failure of the government right now that it needs to face really, really, really boldly at the moment to make sure that we can really look at that risk differently, as Roy was saying. And then the other policy exception is that, I guess it's not a specific policy, but it's a perception of risk around fraud. So, with the CERB, you applied, you got the money, and they're auditing later, which we all know there's actually some issues with the way they're auditing, but the audit later thing is about the way we trust our citizens, and it's about the way we perceive fraud. And it's that don't spend a dollar chasing a penny, as Jeff was saying, and actually believe that people, for the most part, want to do good. Your fraud is this much. How much money do you spend chasing your fraud is actually something we should really think about when we think about value in the government of Canada. And that was the change there. So these are policy changes that are allowing faster delivery. And I'm a little sad to see them not continuing on in all the ways, but I do believe there's going to be a lot of changes soon as people start working to improve that and knowing what we can do and what we can do outside of a crisis.
Merci beaucoup, Meg, Jeff, and Roy, pour votre temps aujourd'hui. Thank you for joining us today. Be sure to sign up for our last event in 2021, Transferable Skills. Je vous remercie d'être venu aujourd'hui à la séance. Assurez-vous de vous inscrire au dernier événement de 2021, compétences transférables. Thank you so much, Meg, Jeff, and Roy again.